Hello again, time then for the press preview. It's our first look at what is on tomorrow's front pages. We're going to check out the headlines tonight with the political editors of the Daily Mirror and The Sun, Pippa, Crerar and Harry Cole. I'm sure they've got a few things to say. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Speak to you both in a second. Let's check out those front pages first for you, though. The Metro leads with the publication of photos apparently showing the Prime Minister giving a toast at an event that broke lockdown rules in November 2020. And The Guardian is also leading with the picture showing Boris Johnson having a drink at number 10. The Telegraph leads with the pictures too and says Scotland Yard is coming under pressure for not fining Boris Johnson for attending the event. The FT says that Rishi Sunak is drawing up new plans for a possible windfall tax to tackle the rising cost of living. The Mail leads with planned rail strikes, which it says could cause power outages and supermarkets to run low on food supplies. And The Sun has a report that one of the pitch invaders at the Etihad Stadium has been found to be an off-duty police officer. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of Tuesday's papers while you watch and listen to us. And I'm joined tonight by Pippa Crerar and Harry Cole. Great to see you both this Monday evening. Pippa, why don't you kick things off for us? Front page of The Guardian, their headline, Fresh Danger for Johnson over number 10 drinks pictures. More pictures have been released, ITV getting hold of these ones. And this photograph, this series of photographs, Pippa, really prompting more questions about whether the Prime Minister misled Parliament.
That's right. I mean, it's been interesting the last couple of days as we sit here waiting for Sue Gray's report, which we're expecting possibly tomorrow or Wednesday. There's been a lot of debate about the photos and whether or not she would include some of the 300 photos which she handed over to police for the police for their investigation. The suggestion seems to be that tonight that she will indeed include some of those events. Number 10's response throughout of this has been that they are relaxed and very happy about the fact that photos might be forthcoming, because some in Number 10 believe that the public imagination has kind of got carried away and the public expect to find, to see pictures of the Prime Minister swinging from the chandeliers or, aides surrounded by piles and piles of empty bottles. Whereas in fact, the pictures are much more of the ilk of the one that was released today by ITV. Smaller groups of people, in this case, I think 8 are in shot, but there's more behind the scenes, standing around in what is obviously a work environment, drinking. The problem is that standing around in a work environment and drinking, what clearly is a social gathering there as the Prime Minister raises a toast to his departing spin doctor Lee Kane, was against the rules at the time, which said, of course, that that you weren't allowed to meet anybody from another household indoors. And the thing which is angering many junior officials and indeed some senior ones in Number 10 tonight is that fines were given out by the police for that event and others that the Prime Minister was in attendance at, but he, of course, was not fined. So the big question on the front of The Guardian, on the front of The Telegraph and other newspapers tonight is, why was the Prime Minister not fined when they were? What is the sort of the exemption that the police are relying on to decided not to fine him? And there's certainly lots of questions for them and Number 10 to answer. We'll probably have to wait until the Sue Gray report comes out to tell you more.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the Lib Dems and others calling on the police watchdog to investigate that very question. Harry, looking inside your paper, The Sun, Hangover 2 is the headline. And what they actually do, what your paper does, is sort of goes into detail about what is on the table here as Boris Johnson is raising his glass. 2 bottles of fizz, 4 bottles of wine, 1 bottle of gin. I mean, it looks like a party, doesn't it? And if some were fined at this event, it was clearly illegal. So it's a very fair question. Why didn't the Prime Minister get a fine for it?
I think he's used what's commonly going to become known as the Keir Starmer defence, that he went back to work afterwards. He may have broken off from work, had a drink, raised a glass. The defence I think they're going to wriggle on and they're going to try and use is this idea that it was reasonably necessary for work. The allies of Mr Johnson tonight saying, look, it was a fraught time in Downing Street. There'd just been one hell of a sort of internal power struggle, a battle. He stopped on his way back to the Number 10 flat, red box in hand, had a drink. Whether that stands the test of scrutiny, I'm not sure, because there are people in that room that say, no, actually, the Prime Minister was the one pouring the glasses and instigating the chat. So it's going to be a rough old week for Mr. Johnson, because the first time we ever saw actually the stark image of a lockdown event was always going to be a tricky time, whether that came in Sue Gray's report or not. As Pippa mentioned, there was some debate about whether they were going to publish the pictures. It seems to me like someone on the outside, won't take a million guesses to work out who, is trying to pressure Sue Gray to include those photographs by publishing or leaking this one tonight.
Yeah, so do you think, Harry, just very quickly, that means that the report may be delayed further then?
I don't know. I think everyone's pretty keen to get it out the door now. Sue Gray, I suspect, wants to get on with her job of running the levelling up department, and Downing Street aren't really wanting to hold this up any longer. Yeah.
Pippa, up front of the Daily Telegraph, discussing what we were saying a moment ago, pressure on Met over pictures of the Prime Minister raising a toast in number 10. I mean, it's hard to know how this changes things, doesn't it? The public, rightly, could well be very furious about it. But in terms of Tory MPs, I'm not getting the sense that it's going to change how they feel about the Prime Minister at the moment. Is that your understanding from what you're hearing from sources?
Yes, that's right. I mean, there've been a couple of examples of MPs that had already called for the Prime Minister to go and then U-turned or held off, saying that now actually it's time for him that he should go. But we're still in a position that we were this time a week ago, this time a month ago, where the majority of Conservative backbenchers are not calling for the Prime Minister to go and not sacking him, as it were, but they're definitely not backing him either. And I think their silence is notable tonight. Very few Tory MPs are coming out and being vocal about why he should survive, beyond a few of his closest allies. So I think there's a sort of a feeling that they want to wait and see what the Sue Gray report's contents reveal. But it doesn't seem to me, and it hasn't seemed to me for some time, as though the MPs, this is going to be sort of anything which the MPs are going to try and oust the PM over. I mean, not since February, when there was that pork pie plot and tensions were heightening and the public anger was escalating. Now people have kind of accepted that this is what's happened. I think the public have made their minds up some time ago that they feel that the Prime Minister lied, whether he's received one fine or multiple fines. They'd come to their own conclusions. The damage for the Prime Minister, I think, is done in terms of his reputation, particularly in some of those blue wall seats in the south and amongst some of the more traditional Conservative areas where probity and individual integrity matters to voters very highly. So I think that the damage is done. Yeah. I'm not convinced that this will shift the dial massively, but of course we need to wait and see.
Yeah, we do need to wait and see. And of course, it's not just Partygate and Sue Gray's report that is taking up a lot of time in Westminster. The cost of living crisis, also a major issue this week. Financial Times has got a story, Harry. Big power generators in Sunak's sights for widened windfall tax. The windfall tax debate continues.
Yeah, it looks like there are some elements of government. I'm not entirely sure Rishi Sunak himself is backing this, but definitely some elements of the Treasury want to essentially steal Labour's clothing on this one. It's been an idea that Labour have been pushing a windfall tax on North Sea oil and gas since about, I think, January or December last year. Now, it seems to me that they're plotting that they could go even further and actually look at the electricity generating companies who, because of the rise in wholesale price of electricity, whether they make it out of gas or wind or tidal, whatever, have had a very, very good year as well. So we could see, I think it's one option on the table, we could see quite a sweeping windfall tax if they can convince the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, who have on the record saying this is not a good idea and not one that Conservatives should be doing, that actually there's enough money to be raised there to hold their nose, so to speak.
OK, all right, we'll get your views on this, Pippa, a little bit later on in the programme. We need to go to a break. Coming up, including this story in The Sun. Kabul botch civil servant must go. Don't go away. Welcome back, part two of the press preview. Pippa and Harry still with me. Pippa, story here, which is interesting, isn't it? This is about the Foreign Office boss, Sir Philip Barton. And you'll remember he was the man who stayed on holiday as Afghanistan fell. Well, he could be in hot water about it.
there's a scathing report out today by the Foreign Affairs Committee, which has been looking into the withdrawal of British troops and British allies, translators and so on, from Afghanistan when Kabul fell to the Taliban last summer. And the focus of this story by Harry's colleague Kate is on Philip Barton. It describes him as the bungling Foreign Office chief. He was the committee, the MPs in the committee did not hold back on the criticism of him. He, of course, stayed on holidays for 11 days when Kabul fell and left it to junior officials to work their way through. He and other senior officials stayed away. So too did Dominic Raab, the foreign secretary at the time, who was on holiday in Crete. And you'll remember the sort of famous wrangling subsequently about whether the beach was closed. He claimed that he was working there, but of course he wasn't back at the Foreign Office where really leadership was needed. And as the committee of MPs has found today, wasn't present either on the official side or the MP side. So it was an utter failure. There's criticism also of the charity scheme, Pen Farthing scheme, to, if you remember, get pets, get dogs out of Afghanistan, feeling that they maybe were prioritised, possibly from interests at the top of government, but over getting people out safely. There were still translators and people that supported the UK stuck in Afghanistan. So this is ongoing, but very, very scathing, and they told him to quit.
OK, Harry, a quick word on that, and then I'm going to ask you about the story on the front of the Sun.
Yeah, no, I'm normally quite sympathetic of the idea that the buck should stop at the very top and the minister should be responsible. But having sat through Philip Barton's evidence session to the committee, you can see why they were so scathing. I mean, I remember there being absolute, jaws on the floor as some of the answers that he was giving MPs. And crucially, let's not forget that Dominic Raab, with a bauble of Deputy Prime Minister, was essentially demoted from the Foreign Office in the wake of this, call it what it is, scandal.
Yeah, OK. We'll leave that there. We're running out of time, but I just want to look at the front of the Sun, talking about that pitch invasion. I mean, the number of pitch invasions haven't there in recent days, but this is quite a headline. Some PCs are on the pitch.
Yeah, this wasn't this weekend, but a previous event where the police have now been trawling through the CCTV and were shocked to discover one of their own on the pitch. I really feel that this is, at a time when we're talking about liberalising rules in football stadiums, perhaps bringing beer back on into the stands, perhaps having standing again. It seems that the police, the FA, the football associations are unable to get a grip on this growing phenomenon of not just pitch invasions, which are one thing celebrating, but violent assault of footballers in what is essentially their place of work. And no one wants to see a return to fences and the horrors of the past, but something needs to be done very quickly on this. And our leader tomorrow and our columnists are all recommending hefty fines for people caught doing this to nip it in the bud.